Hey guys, Tyler here. We're gonna do some live streaming for a little bit. It's almost lunchtime too, so yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of a live stream. I don't know what we're doing right now. We're gonna do a little bit of a live stream, have lunch on the camera, and do some other things, and maybe do B stars today, or most likely do it tomorrow. We'll see how we go.
Pretty generic freelance North American steam engine, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that wheel arrangement, but there is a pretty faithful recreation of a slope-back tender, which were a unique style of tender commonly used in yards and switching areas to provide the crew with greater visibility.
Never heard of that before.
The train is pretty much just freelance generic rolling stock designs. In season 2, episode 15, we see this absolute monstrosity of a locomotive design.
What the?
As cursed as this thing looks, I do think they probably got some inspiration from either a Union Pacific FEF or a New York Central Mohawk, since it appears the engine has
New York Central Mohawk?
smoke deflectors.
Guys, anyone know when the next train is scheduled?
Don't worry, if a train comes, I'll warn you in slow motion. Train!
Now here is one that we know for sure had a real-life inspiration, since it's a parody of a live-action movie. Season 7, episode 15 is a parody of the classic film Stand By Me, and faithfully recreates the train bridge scene in that movie. In the original, McCloud River Railroad 262 number 25 and 282 number 19 are both used. So I think it's fair to say that animators used these engines as examples. Fun fact, this specific episode of Family Guy also
Unstoppable.
has a brief appearance in the best train movie of all time.
Unstoppable.
In season 20, episode 15, Meg jumps over a train while in a police pursuit. This locomotive is definitely inspired by a traditional GP or SD style of EMD locomotive, with the paint scheme likely pulled from the BNSF.
Okay.
The marker lights on this engine are lit, so the engineer must have been a rail fan.
Hey, so can I meet your wife?
Now she's playing with the trains. There's tension in our relationship, but I can't say why.
Why?
I can't say.
In season 20, episode 14, Lois is depicted as the train guy and has a pretty cool model train layout and a lot of alcohol. The train she is running is another EMD-style diesel with a paint scheme reminiscent of the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis. More interestingly, though, the station on her layout seems to have been derived from Knapford Station in
Ooh.
Here's one last honorable mention. In the Family Guy spinoff, The Cleveland Show, we get to see what Thomas himself is like in the Seth MacFarlane universe.
What's that, Thomas? Choo-choo.
That's all I got for today.
That's 13.
Subscribe and stay tuned.
Which there actually is a 13. Actually, there is engine 13. Quick thing, guys, there actually is engine 13 in Thomas Tank Engine, but it only gets used one time.
Superstar Jelly Roll is one of the big names who took the stage.
Even I know enough about engine.
We've got ourselves a potty trainer.
Look at her, using pull-ups training pants just like undies.
If accidents happen.
Yesterday, I learned the difference between a train and a boat. I wrote this song before that.
Here goes the city department. Simpsons 1 month ago. Okay.
I uploaded a video not too long ago looking at some of the trains that appeared in Family Guy and discussing what real-life prototypes they might be based on. That video got some really great response, and a number of people asked for us to look at the trains of The Simpsons. So, here you go.
Okay. And well, in a second, I'm going to do 2 more things. Ooh, a Cadbury Dupper. Well, the fire. I was going to have some. Oh, but I was always from going for dinner. Well, I love this channel. I love my YouTube channel. I do pretty well on it. And my channel does pretty good to my standards. It's 11 o'clock. I'm going to do one more thing, eat lunch, and that's it. Yeah, I wish I had that too. But I think the channel does real well. We're gonna do this for a little bit today. I'm definitely doing B-Stars today or tomorrow. Half the day's done with, I know. Half the day's already gone. But I mean tomorrow, and that's it. Okay, I'm gonna watch this. I haven't seen it before. Did you go on? Yeah, the show's almost done, so. A long intro. They're done. Okay. I'm Ron Peel. Sold shit for over 60. I sold shit for over 60 years. Everyone knows who Ron Popeil is. He's the guy who sold people shit for over 30 years. Hot doggy. You're a hot doggy. You're a hot doggy. What's what I do? Oh, bring to the plate. I wish I had it on TV. Tyler, you look good for your age. Yep. If I can live up to the age of 63 or 60, if I can live over the age of 63, I'll be happy. What do you mean? Yeah, that's the only thing I really got. That's the only thing I really want to do is make sure. If I'm ever getting when I get my 60s, the last thing I want to do before I die, I get to be at least 60 or 70 years old, right? About when that thing I want to do happens before I die. But still, that's a goal of yours, right? Yeah, goal of mine. My last goal is to do before I die. I don't care if I die at the age of 60. As long as I can live up to the 100th running of the Daytona 500, I don't care. Really? You want to see the 100th running of the Daytona 500? If it stays going like it is right now, I'll watch it. As long as I don't switch the battery, I don't care. As long as it sticks to gasoline car, Tesla doesn't do NASCAR. That I would allow, but that's for a video I'm going to do later for NASCAR. If Tesla even attempt to be a NASCAR, it better be a pace car, nothing else.
Isn't this dangerous?
It's okay, Bart. This track has been abandoned since 1900.
19 what?
Episode 19, Homer and Bart are stealing ties from a railroad that they think is abandoned until a very recognizable diesel locomotive rounds the corner. I don't think there's any argument that this is heavily inspired by a Santa Fe war bonnet. The engine in the show was the number 107, which belonged to an FP45 in real life. I'm not sure if this number had any significance to the show or if it was just random. Interestingly enough, this isn't the only time the ATSF or the Warbonnet paint scheme will make an appearance in this video. In Season 8, Episode 4, we see Burns riding in his private rail car at the end of an Amtrak train. There's a few layers of realism to this scene, since private rail cars being pulled by Amtrak trains was a common practice up until a few years ago. The Amtrak train itself wears a paint scheme that directly pulls from Amtrak's Phase 3 livery, and if you ask me, the engine in the show looks to be based on either an F40PH or a P30CH. In Season 9, Episode 21, Lisa shares on her news segment that the Union Pacific rail line in Springfield is abandoned when a train rolls by just seconds later. The contest includes a reskin of the previous Amtrak locomotive design, numerous yellow boxcars all wearing the UP branding, and a pretty nicely drawn center cupola caboose. It's hard to say if there are any specific UP engines that they had in mind here, since they reused the same model as previously seen in Amtrak colors. This model makes another brief appearance 10 seasons later in Season 19, Episode 3, in a Milwaukee Road-inspired paint scheme. There's this brief train scene in Season 7, Episode 20. The contest feature is all the same generic boxcar design, however, so I don't think that there's enough to draw from here in regards to a real-life basis. Season 11, Episode 19, however, features probably the most faithfully drawn train in the show, a red GP7 that I must say is incredibly detailed. Many GP7s wore red paint schemes in real life, including the Frisco, CNJ, and Rock Island railroads, but the one that I think is closest to this illustration is the Burlington route scheme. The Amtrak model from earlier also returns here. The GP7, or generic high-hood GP design, makes 3 more appearances in the show. Season 14, Episode 14 in a green paint scheme, Season 23, Episode 17 in a yellow paint scheme, and Season 10, Episode 17 in a gray paint scheme. It's hard to say if the illustrators had any paint schemes in mind for these engines or if they just picked random colors. So let me know in the comments which railroads you think these engines might represent. This CMD-inspired diesel also appears in the show, which to me looks more like an SD40-2 style engine. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that the Santa Fe will make a few more appearances in the show, and here's another one in Season 12, Episode 4. This looks to be an EMD E6 wearing a fictional green Warbonnet paint scheme. Some BNSF SD70 Max wore a kind of similar paint scheme to this, but I don't think the animators were necessarily inspired by those, but rather made the train green to reference the theme of the episode being Lisa's environmentalism. The Santa Fe E6 design makes another appearance in a much more neutral gray and red paint scheme. The plot of Season 14, Episode 2 revolves almost entirely around a monorail, which I guess is technically a train, so let's include it. I know nothing about monorails outside of Disney World, so I don't have any idea what specific set this would reference in real life. If you have an idea, let me know in the comments. Season 22, Episode 8 features the show's spoof on the Polar Express. The funniest thing about this for me is that you can tell they used the Lionel product art as a basis for the drawings, since the angle and few of the shots are basically carbon copies of the photos seen on Lionel packaging. And just like that, we are down to the last 2 trains that we're going to take a look at in this video, which also happen to be my 2 favorites. In Season 29, Episode 21, we see a train that, in my opinion, is a dead ringer for a New Jersey Transit GP40PH-2 with matching passenger cars. Even the NJT lining can be seen replicated on the passenger car. And my favorite train appearance in The Simpsons is in Season 9, Episode 16, which features a tribute to the legendary railroad photographer O. Winston Link, complete with that N&W Class A design. Yeah, that is pretty awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know in the comments what video you want to see next on the channel, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now. Guys, I am sorry, but if you clicked on this video expecting a nice, normal rail painting video, then you just made a terrible mistake. Because today, we're going to see some weird, unusual, dangerous, and even cursed things that I've seen while rail painting in the last few years. Like, for instance, the time I found a broken crossing gate just lying in the middle of the road. So I'm trying to go find a southbound that I saw a line through.
Okay, there's this really bad dude named Hacker. What? He wants to take over the cyber world from Motherboard. The 3 kids are sucked into cyberspace, and they use break.
Western Michigan is a fast-growing region full of unique experiences and traditions, and Culligan has a long history of providing custom solutions to address the area's water worries, like bacteria, lead, nitrates, and PFAS. Culligan, water you love since 1936.
Unlock the classrooms, unlock the bathrooms, prepare attendance sheets. Man, I can't believe we have to do all these things before school starts. And there's more. There must be an easier way.
Yeah, use the computer.
This is the way credit cards used to work. Visa, Diners Club, American Express, MasterCard. They all work the same way, but they're all going to change. This is the suite of the future. And this is International Verifact, the company that makes that little machine in a plant north of Toronto. This gizmo is the built-in telephone, so the credit card reader can dial up the computer and see if you're good for it. We get a demonstration from the man who started this company, Doug Archibald. First, the credit card is swished through, and the machine reads the numbers, asks how much was lunch, then it calls the banks, checks your limit, then zaps back an authorization.
There's nothing worse, and I'm sure everybody's experienced it, than standing waiting for a credit card authorization when the sales clerk is on the phone. Because basically what's happening is someone that you don't know is talking about you and your financial condition to someone you can't even see.
The credit card is at home at lunch, and so is credit card fraud and abuse. At this place, Joe Allen's, the floor limit is $150. That means call the bank. But the new machine catches everybody.
At this upscale restaurant, the average lunch bill runs to $20 a person or more, and most of them put it on plastic. But about 8 times a day, the machine says no to the charges. Electronic meter is catching up with the modern deadbeat, and it does it in about 10 seconds.
I'm not deadbeat.
Restaurant owner John Maxwell.
It is really fascinating that charges which heretofore would have been automatically processed because they weren't over the floor limit, are now being rejected because the customer in question is sailing so close to the wind.
This is that machine again at this restaurant. You won't believe what's going to happen.
Why is it doing this?
Anyway, the machine reads the card. This is the real thing. And the waitress does the paperwork while the computers chat with each other. But the machine comes back with, hold the card. Honest, we didn't stage this.
The telephone call, retain possession of the card, call Scotiabank Authorization Center. So what do you want me to do?
Panic sets in.
Okay, can you hold on to me, please? We need a description of the person.
Is it a stolen card? Is the owner over the limit? No, it's a man with a Visa card with the name Cheryl on it.
You hold on. You want to speak to the customer?
The man with the lunch bill arrives to explain to the bank that the card was switched at another restaurant last night. Just an honest mistake. But the machine caught it.
Real card number?
The automatic teller machine is changing too. Most are operated by credit cards. Early next year, you'll be able to use a card from, say, the Royal Bank to make a withdrawal from the Bank of Commerce. At this machine in the United States, a Canadian bank card can be used to withdraw American cash, handy for traveling. And there are new machines. The object is to get these in the lobby and tellers off the payroll. That means keep it simple, as Phillips executive Ian Burns explains.
Okay, basically, you put the card in, swipe it down here, key in your personal identification number, and then press the dollar amount you wish to withdraw. Simplistic process. Lift up your cash, and away you go to the races.
This machine not only saves work, but it saves stamps. In goes the card, and up comes a number of services. One of them is printing out your bank statement. Coming soon to banks near you. This is a smart card. It's the future.
That gold seal is a tiny computer.
We have those now in our
that
cards.
How much money you've spent, how much you have left. John Elliott of MasterCard in New York explains just how powerful the smart card is.
This is an example
That's
of,
some lunch.
of what it
Stuff.
would look like if you could peel away the back of our existing card, the card with the chip in it. What you'd see is a chip with data storage and another separate chip over here with the processor itself. The processor has the same processing capability as an Apple IIe. It has a 64K memory and an 8-bit processor.
The smart card is being tested in Maryland. With it, you can't overspend your limit, and fraud is almost impossible. The card's inserted, a personal identification number punched in. The card itself authorizes the transaction and remembers how much you've spent. Right now, there are about 6,000 of these smart cards in use in North America. By the end of this year, about 30,000 will be used in tests in the United States. Once they get the bugs worked out, they should show up in Canada about a year from now.
1985.
Set your look.
So we're just having fun, guys. It's just we just had lunch and we're just down for a little bit.
With 24 translucent new setting powder by Laura Mercier.
Well, actually, lose a few pounds. I know I lost a few. I'm losing a few pounds next month. Here's my burn. Pop.
I am sick as hell of you constantly making a mess of this house and having to clean up after you. So I hired a maid.
What are you, nuts? We don't have the money for that.
Oh, really? And what about the Peter copter? Did we not have money for the Peter copter?
Hey, did I say anything when you bought that iron?
Whatever. Peter, you better do your CPR.
There's no time, Lois. I gotta go warn Quagmire while I got the chance. Quick, to the Peter copter!
You could just walk next door.
A no rules funny car race from here to Boston. Last one to Fenway gets snipped. Go! Almost there. Eat my dust, Lois. Well, it looks like I'm a man with no sperm. But I'll always be a man with no sperm who once had a wonderful day.
Peter, he's not moving. We gotta get him to the hospital.
You got it, Lois. Tell Peter rang. Just for the record, I was at the hospital for a brief moment. Hey, Matt, you want to huck some water balloons at nerds?
Sure. What the hell?
Oh, we'll work on the laugh, but you'll get there. To the make copter. Look down there. It looks like me with a green shirt. He's murdering a lady.
But you know, it's not just the Griffins who work hard to make Family Guy what it is. Here in the prompts department, some sweaty guy is working on the Peter cop.
That's right. You know, a lot of people don't realize SEAL Team 6 actually completed their mission in this puppy.
Oh, cool! Family Guy! Over here! About here!
We gotta stop them.
So you admit you were wrong?
Yes.
You admit you were stupid?
Yes, yes.
You admit all women are stupid?
No.
All right, I'll take what I can get. Come on! To the Peter Tacto! Oh, no, now I gotta take care of the babies.
I have dibs on whatever silliness Peter loses interest in.
Remember this?
To the Cleveland copter! The mustache and spears love you! We gotta get Loretta and Cleveland back together. And I know just how to do it. To the Hendon, Peter! Oh my God! Joe, I am so sorry. How can you afford these things?
That's a good question. How can you afford half this stuff besides being on TV?
We smoke it low and slow, old school, the old-fashioned way.
Was she just like that? Where's the cartoon worked?
Yeah, this was freshly made, so I'm gonna go right down the middle and give it.
Have you ever wondered what the strongest tornado to have hit your state was? For some states, the answer is pretty obvious and well known, but for others, the answer isn't as clear. In this video, we're going to be going through the tornado history of every
2 months ago, so okay, we're gonna see this real quick.
U.S. state and taking a look at the strongest tornado to have occurred within each state's lines. And make sure you stay tuned because there are certainly some surprises on this list. Let's begin with the F0 or EF0 states.
Okay, pop quiz, guys. I was in an F2 or an F. Was it F2 or 3? It's been years, so who knows?
State, I should say. Alaska is not surprisingly the only U.S. state that strongest tornado on record was either an F0 or EF0.
Okay.
This is due to Alaska's very rugged terrain and typically frigid climate.
Let's see what Michigan gets. This video was up 2 months ago, so we'll see what happens.
You can count all of the tornadoes that have ever happened in Alaska on just about 2 hands. Moving on to the F1 and EF1.
Okay, guys. So, really, Alaska's only F0?
Tornado development. In fact, you can count all of the tornadoes that have ever happened in Alaska on just about 2 hands. Moving on to the F1 and EF1 states.
Before we start, guys, I'm just going to stick with F1 because I know there's EF6 now. There's only been 2 EF6 tornadoes that were recorded, but we're just going to stick with the Fs. Okay, Fs.
We kind of have to bend the rules a little.
We'll change it.
There's no state with this being the highest rating, so we'll include the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has had a handful of tornadoes over the years, with somewhere in the ball.
So we're putting Puerto Rico on this too? Puerto Rico?
Have to bend the rules a little because there is no
U.S. territory.
In the highest rating, so we'll include the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has had a handful of tornadoes over the years, with somewhere in the ballpark of 24 being recorded, with many waterspouts. As for F or EF1s, it has seen 5, which occurred on June 7, 1962, May 5, 1969, August 29, 1974, May 1, 2022, and finally June 16, 2023. Interestingly, Puerto Rico is no stranger to thunderstorms, but tornadoes are rare because that area typically lacks the low-level winds that cause thunderstorms to spin and then produce tornadoes. Continuing on to the F2 and EF2 category, and we have 4 states and 1 district. We might as well stay with the island theme for now and add Hawaii to the list. Since 1950, Hawaii's had around 40 recorded tornadoes, most of which being very weak and the last one occurring a decade ago in 2015. They have had 4 separate F2s though, which occurred on January 20, 1971, 2 of them on February 11, 1982, and 1 on March 18, 1982. In terms of specific weather conditions, Hawaii is similar to Puerto Rico, where they do get thunderstorms quite a few days during the year, but typically lack the other ingredients to generate tornadoes. Traveling back over to the U.S. mainland, and we arrive at the 36th state, which is Nevada. It's no surprise that Nevada is this far down on the list due to the state's dry and arid terrain, with only about 80 total tornadoes being recorded since the early 60s. The state has only had 1 F2 tornado, which occurred all the way back on April 18, 1949. The twister touched down just north of Reno and tracked northeast for nearly 10 miles before dissipating.
Okay.
To find the next participant on the list, we need to travel across the entire country over to the East Coast. Although it too is not a state, the District of Columbia is next on the list, with 3 separate F2s traveling through the area over the
DC.
years. The first occurred on September 16, 1888, then on April 5, 1923, and finally November 17, 1927. If we keep traveling northeast, we arrive at the next state on the list, which is Rhode Island. another very small state which certainly plays a factor of keeping it this far down on the list. Rhode Island has seen 2 F or EF2 tornadoes in its history, with the first occurring on August 7, 1986, and the most recent one occurring just a couple of years ago on August 18, 2023.
Wow.
And to cap off the F2 and EF2 category, we're going to be moving to the most northeast state, which happens to be Maine. Maine is the first state on the list where tornadoes aren't exceedingly rare, with the state averaging about 2 touchdowns a year. It also has had too many F or EF2s to name each instance, with about 20 being recorded in the entire history of the state. This is also the first state on the list that has recorded a tornado-related fatality, which did occur all the way back on August 11, 1954, with an F2 all the way up near Caribou. To begin the F and EF3 category,
I was in a
all
3.
F2s travel one state over to New Hampshire.
I was in a
The
3.
United States has had 3 separate F3 tornadoes in its history, all of which occurred back in the 50s and 60s. The first occurred on June 9, 1953, then again a decade later on May 20, 1963, and the most recent one occurring on August 25, 1969. In an unrelated note, New Hampshire's most impressive tornado occurred back on July 24, 2008, but was only rated as an EF2. This impressive twister tracked for just over 50 miles, injured 2, and claimed 1 life. All of these are fairly impressive though, considering New Hampshire's mountainous terrain and relative lack of tornadoes. Vermont is the next entry on the list, but 2 more F3s occurring within state lines. The first was a brief touchdown that occurred on August 20th, 1968. The most recent one, which happened on May 31st, 1998, was much more significant though. It actually touched down over the border in New York, just north of Albany, and tracked for over 30 miles before dissipating in Vermont. This notable tornado also injured 68 people over the course of its life. That's it for New England states for now, as we now travel down to the Mid-Atlantic region. Our first state down here is New Jersey. Tornadoes aren't particularly rare in the Garden State, with an average of 2 to 3 occurring each year. The state has also recorded 9 total F or EF3 tornadoes over the years, with the most recent being on September 1st, 2021, from the remnants of Hurricane Ida. The longest tracked tornado in state history, though, was an F1 that occurred on March 10th, 1961, which tracked for 59 miles. New Jersey's next-door neighbor of Delaware is next on the list. Despite its very small size, the first U.S. state has seen 3 F or EF3 tornadoes. The first occurred on June 23, 1944, and it was another tornado that touched down in a different state before eventually crossing over into Delaware. This tornado allegedly traveled for 28 miles, but it should be noted that there is strong debate to whether this was actually one tornado or a tornado family. The next one occurred on April 28, 1961, with a very short-lived tornado this time. The most recent instance happened a couple of years ago on April 1st, 2023. This notable tornado tracked for 14 miles and claimed 1 life before eventually lifting. To find the next batch of states on the list, we once again have to travel across the country to the desert Southwest, where we arrive in New Mexico. New Mexico usually sees about 10 tornadoes a year and has recorded 9 F3 tornadoes in its history. All of the 9 were relatively short-lived and also all occurred over 45 years ago, with the most recent coming on May 13, 1977. New Mexico's longest tracked tornado was an F2 that tracked for 91 miles on June 5, 1931. Moving west, and we arrive at the next state, which is Arizona. Despite the typical desert conditions, the Grand Canyon state has seen 3 F or EF3 tornadoes in its history. The first occurred southwest of Phoenix on August 4, 1957. The second one occurred 15 years later on August 10, 1972, near Prescott, and the most recent one occurred on October 6, 2010, during Arizona's most famous tornado outbreak. Continuing to move west, and we get to California. The Golden State has seen 2 separate F3 tornadoes, which both occurred near the Arizona state border, and both during the 1970s. The first was a short-lived tornado on August 16, 1973, and the second was just down the road a ways on February 8, 1978. The most amazing thing about California's tornado history, though, has to be the slightly unofficial EF3 Firenado that happened on July 26, 2018 in the Carr Fire. For those that don't know, yes, firenadoes are real and can be very strong. To explain it simply, firenadoes form when intense wildfires generate a rapidly rising column of hot air that begins to spin due to wind shear and other atmospheric conditions. This particular firenado had estimated wind speeds of 143 miles per hour and actually claimed 3 lives. Moving on and traveling northeast, and we arrive in Utah. The Beehive State has only seen a single F3 tornado, but it was a rather substantial one. It occurred in the northeast portion of the state on August 11, 1993, and tracked for 17 miles. While not the state's strongest tornado, the most famous has to be the F2 that tracked through downtown Salt Lake City on August 11, 1999, injuring 80 and claiming 1 life. The Beehive State's northern neighbor is next up. Idaho has experienced 2 separate F3 tornadoes, but both were admittedly a long time ago. The first instance was on June 7, 1936, just east of Lewiston. This tornado was on the ground for less than a mile, but allegedly claimed the lives of 2 people. The second F3 occurred in the southern region of the state on April 26, 1940, just northwest of Twin Falls. Moving westward once again, we arrive in Oregon, which is probably the state with the biggest asterisk on this list. That's because the state has only seen 1 F3 tornado in its history, which was on April 5, 1972, and it touched down just about on the border of Washington. It crossed into Washington almost immediately after touching down and tracked for a total of 9 miles before dissipating. This was a substantial tornado, though, as it tracked through heavily populated areas of both states, injuring 300 and claiming 6 total lives. Washington caps off the list of F and EF3 states and has experienced 3 separate F3 tornadoes, including the one we just mentioned. The first touched down in Seattle on December 12, 1969, and tracked for 4 miles before roping out. The other one occurred on April 5, 1972, which was the same day as the Oregon and Washington border tornado. This one touched down on the other side of the state, though, just west of Spokane. It's time to move on to the F4 states, and we will stay in the western half of the country to begin.
Montana?
Montana is first up and has only seen 1 F4 tornado, which occurred on June 29, 1961, near the town of Glendive. This one touched down on the eastern side of town and tracked northeast for 16 miles before roping out. It reportedly also caused 1 injury while it was on the ground. If we travel 1 state south, we arrive at what is probably the biggest surprise on this list for a couple of reasons. Wyoming isn't typically a state that people characterize with strong tornadoes, and it's even more surprising when you learn that Wyoming's only F4 tornado occurred in Yellowstone National Park at 10,000 feet in elevation. This monumental tornado touched down on July 21, 1987, south of Yellowstone and moved northeast and eventually traveled through the southeast corner of the park. It was on the ground for 24 miles and grew to a max width of 1.5 miles. Luckily and not surprisingly, nobody was affected by this rural tornado. This tornado also held the record for the highest elevation tornado until it was dethroned in 2004. Speaking of mountainous states, we're going to round out the western half of the country in Colorado. The Centennial State has seen its fair share of strong tornadoes, with the state recording 6 F4s in its history. The first one touched down east of Denver on August 10, 1924, and tracked for 20 miles and claimed 10 miles.
Hello.
The second one touched down in the
Pretty good. I'm learning some history.
corner of the state on June 8, 1928, and tracked for 45
I'm learning something interesting about each state tornado thing.
country in Colorado.
So doing pretty good.
The
Had lunch.
Centennial State has seen its fair share of strong tornadoes, with the state recording 6 F4s in its history. The first one touched down east of Denver on August 10, 1924, and tracked for 20 miles and claimed 10 lives. The second one touched down in the extreme southeast corner of the state on June 8, 1928, and tracked for 45 miles before roping out in the Oklahoma Panhandle. This one was also a killer tornado as it claimed 2 additional lives. The third one occurred just a few weeks later north of Denver on June 29, 1928, and it tracked for 15 miles and also claimed 2 lives. The next one touched down on April 29, 1942, near Wiley, and tracked for 30 miles and also claimed 4 lives. The fifth one touched down 5 years later on June 8, 1947, and tracked for 20 miles over mainly rural farmland. Finally, the most recent F4 happened in the late 70s, specifically on May 18, 1977. This one actually touched down in Oklahoma before traveling 39 miles and eventually crossing the border and dissipating in Colorado. After once again traveling across the country, we arrive in Florida. The Sunshine State is no stranger to thunderstorms, as it's the state that annually receives.
It sucks that it's raining all the time.
As for tornadoes, Florida has recorded 2 F4.
It sucks that it's raining all the time. Yeah, I bet it does suck for you guys, but hey, it's not raining right now where I'm at. It's nice and sunny out.
Which could not have been more different from one another.
I'm just looking up some
The first
historical
one
stuff.
occurred On April 15, 1958, and according to historical data, was only on the ground for less than a mile. This tornado was also controversial as different from one another. The first one occurred on April 15, 1958.
St. Peter's, Clearwater.
It was only on the ground for less than a mile.
That's not
This
where I'm
tornado
at.
was also controversial as numerous people have called into question whether this rating of F4 was actually justified. As for the other tornado on the list, the differences couldn't be any
I don't see any key. I don't see any towns recognized.
April 4th, 1966.
Wow.
And stayed on the ground for a whopping 136 miles.
The length of the
across
state?
entire state.
Wow.
This tornado ended up claiming the lives of 11, making it one of the deadliest in state history.
Wow.
Impressively, the same storm system that spawned this F4 also produced another tornado, which was later rated as an F2, which stayed on the ground for 123 miles
Wow.
and also crossed the entire state.
That takes a record. That's a new record. Yeah, I'm watching something historical this weekend. I got plans this weekend. If it doesn't go bad, I can't wait to do it. It seems to be quite hot, so we might not be doing it.
Continuing on and moving northwards along the east coast,
Oh,
we
yeah.
get to South Carolina. The Palmetto State typically sees between 14
South
and
Carolina.
26 tornadoes each year, and has actually seen 16 F or EF4 tornadoes in its history.
Wow.
The first on record occurred on March 20th, 1875, and the most recent occurred on April 12th, 2020. The state has seen numerous long-tracking tornadoes as well, but the most significant one in terms of loss of life was the one that occurred on April 30th, 1924. This particular tornado was on the ground for 105 miles, injured 534, and claimed 53 lives.
To Michigan.
The longest track tornado in state history touched down on April 8th, 1957, and stayed on the ground for 1 month.
Only to Michigan, Indiana, because that's where I'm from.
North Carolina, which conveniently brings up the next state. Just like its sister state, the Tar Heel state has had a pretty active tornado history with 15 F4 tornadoes recorded. The first time occurred on February 19, 1884, and the most recent was on May 7, 1998. The deadliest tornado in state history was also the first F4 in 1884, which claimed 23 lives and injured 100. The longest track tornado in state history, though, was not one of the F4s. It was an F3 on November 22, 1992, that tracked for 160 miles in total.
Nope.
Continuing northwards along the coastline, we enter Virginia. In contrast with both North and South Carolina, Virginia has only seen 2 F4 tornadoes, which occurred on August 6, 1993,
I love watching historical stuff for fun.
September 24, 2001. Ironically, though, neither of these tornadoes hold the record as the deadliest or longest tracked in state history. The title of the deadliest goes to an F2 that touched down in the extreme western portion of the state on May 2, 1929, and claimed 13 lives and injured 100. The title for the longest track goes to an EF3 that touched down on April 16, 2011, and stayed on the ground for a total of 47 miles.
Wow.
West Virginia has a similar tornado background, as it has also only seen 2 F4 tornadoes in its history, both of which occurred on June 23, 1944. The first one touched down in the northern panhandle and crossed into Pennsylvania, then back into West Virginia, and finally Maryland, where it eventually broke out. This tornado was allegedly on the ground for 98 miles, and it technically is the longest track tornado in state history, although it should be mentioned that this was more than likely a tornado family. The other F4 from that day was actually no slouch either, and it's actually the deadliest one in state history. This one tracked for 60 miles, injured 381, and claimed 100 lives. The last mid-Atlantic state to cover for now is Maryland. Maryland has seen 3 F4 tornadoes, including one of the previously mentioned West Virginia ones. The second one in state history touched down in Pennsylvania on June 2, 1998, and traveled 37 miles before dissipating in Maryland. The most famous F4 tornado in state history, and the most recent, has to be the La Plata tornado of April 28, 2002. This tornado tracked for 38 miles, injured 100, and claimed 3 lives. It also notably and famously was initially rated as an F5 before eventually being downgraded to the current rating of F4. New York is the next state in line and has seen 3 F4 tornadoes.
Any in Manhattan?
The first one touched down in extreme eastern New York on August 28, 1973, and traveled southeast for 10 miles before dissipating across the border in Massachusetts. The second one occurred during the...
I wonder if there's ever been a tornado in Manhattan.
Rapid dehydration. Gatorade. Is it in you?
Like y'all got a case of the zoomies. Have y'all seen the real view maps on Realtor.com? You can easily.
There's no houses around here.
Calling a lawyer is absolutely something a person should do if they've been hurt. When you've been hurt,
Yep, the news on later.
you will.
Maybe.
On the May 31st, 1985 tornado outbreak and touched down in Pennsylvania before crossing the border into New York. The most recent F4 occurred on July 10, 1989, where it touched down just west of Albany and tracked southeast for 32 miles. Moving over into New England once again, and we arrived this time in Connecticut. Just like New York, Connecticut has also seen 3 F4 tornadoes. The first F4, which also happens to be the deadliest in state history, touched down on August 9, 1878, and tracked for 11 miles, injured 70, and claimed 34 lives. The next one was the famous Windsor Locks tornado of October 3, 1979. This late-season tornado traveled northwest for 19 miles and claimed 3 lives. It also notoriously hit the New England Air Museum, where it destroyed dozens of vintage planes, which helped certify it as one of the costliest tornadoes in American history. The most recent F4 came on July 10, 1989, in the southern part of the state. Last but not least for the F and EF4 states is Massachusetts. The Bay State has seen 4 F4 tornadoes.
Massachusetts, any in Boston? Sorry, my phone buzz. I can see my phone buzz for. You guys got traits? You're good. Get this one charged. I charged it now. What, baby? You guys got food? You guys got treats? You gotta go outside. What, baby girl? I'm following you. What? Yeah, I know, but that's something surprising. They never had that go off. I use the restroom back. I use the restroom to take care of the cat. Cat want to go outside.
Its history, including the previously mentioned 1979 Windsor Locks tornado from Connecticut and the 1973 Cannon tornado from New York. The first recorded F4 in state history, though, was the famous Worcester F4 tornado of June 9, 1953. This beast tracked for 35 miles, injured 1,228, and claimed 94 lives, which cements it as one of the deadliest in U.S. history. This tornado has also long been theorized to have been an F5 based off of damage, but has never received the formal upgrade.
What about the 1925?
F4 in state history came on May 29, 1995, near Great Barrington. This tornado tracked for 12 miles and claimed 3 lives.
It would be archived, wouldn't it be? Yeah.
That's because it stayed over mainly rural forests, and the F4 rating that was given was based only and entirely off of a single car that was thrown 1,000 feet by the twister, despite the highest structural damage being F3. With the F and EF4 states now being done, that leaves us with one category left, the F and EF5 states. To start off, we don't have to travel that far from New England, as Pennsylvania is our first state. The Keystone State has only seen one F5 in its history, which occurred during the May 31st, 1985 tornado outbreak. It initially touched down across the border in Ohio and tracked for 47 miles before roping out near the town of Mercer. This tornado injured 310 and claimed 18 lives.
This is Niles, Wheatland, Michigan.
Another notable tornado occurred during the same outbreak
Wait.
in the central part of the state. This tornado was rated as an F4, but was more than likely much stronger as it stayed over Maine.
So we're talking about Pennsylvania.
Touchdown across the border in Ohio and tracked for 47 miles before roping out near the town of Mercer.
It says Niles Wheatland.
Claimed 18 lives as well. While not officially the strongest, another notable
Hey,
tornado
baby.
occurred during the same outbreak in the central part of the state. This tornado was rated as an F4, but was more than likely much stronger as it stayed over mainly rural forests for most of its life. At its peak, it grew to almost 2 miles wide and was strong enough to shake the ground and register on local seismographs.
Wow.
As previously mentioned, Ohio is also on this tier of the list and has seen 4 F5s.
I'll do that. Well, I know we had F5s in Michigan. I mean, I'm a history nut, but we do have a couple F5s that had hit Michigan over the years, but not as many as you'd think. Mostly 3s and lower, right? Mostly lower than 3.
First one occurred on April 23rd, 1968, with the next 2 coming on the April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak. The most recent in state history is the previously mentioned F5 from May 31st, 1985. The most notable of these twisters has to be the Xenia F5, which was on the ground for
74.
miles, injured 1,150, and claimed 36.
Xenia 74.
Moving northwards to Michigan, and we see a similar case. The April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak. The most recent in state history is the previously mentioned F5 from May 31st, 1985.
Xenia, Ohio.
The most notable of these twisters has to be the Xenia F5,
Mhm.
which was on the ground for 31 miles, injured 1,150, and claimed 36 lives. Moving northwards to Michigan,
Okay, Michigan.
and we see a similar
An
case
Indian,
in
right? Yeah.
Ohio. The state has also seen 4 F5s, which all occurred many decades ago. The first occurred on May 23rd, 1896, then on June 5th, 1905, then June 8th, 1953, and finally the most recent, which occurred on April 3rd, 1956.
Huntsville. I know where that's at. You know where Huntsville is.
The June 8th, 1953 F5, which tore through portions of Flint, claimed 116 lives, which puts it in the top 10 of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history. Indiana is next up and has seen 5 F5s within its state lines. The first one came just northeast of Indianapolis on April 1st, 1884. The second was the back end of the tri-state tornado on March 18th, 1925.
Oh, yeah.
Dissipated not too long after crossing into the state. While
Tri-state.
some details about this tornado are disputed, such as was it actually one tornado or rather a tornado family, what's not disputed is the fact that it injured 2,027 and claimed 695 lives, which is the deadliest in U.S. history. After this, the 3 most recent F5s in state history all came with the April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak. Indiana's next-door neighbor of Illinois is next and has seen 5 F5s itself. The first one occurred on April 24th, 1880, just southeast of Springfield. The second one was the middle portion of the previously mentioned tri-state tornado on March 18th, 1925. The third occurred on March 16th, 1942, just north of Peoria. The fourth was a relatively short-lived tornado in the southern part of the state, which was only on the ground for 5 miles or so. Finally, the most recent is the Plainfield tornado, which hit on August 28, 1990, and notoriously hit without any warning, leaving 29 people dead. Moving back southeast, and we get to Kentucky, which has seen just 2 F5s. Both of these were already previously mentioned and occurred during the April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak. However, if we want to talk about tornadoes that were probably of EF5 strength within state lines, then the December 10th, 2021 Mayfield EF4 needs to be talked about. This beast was on the ground for 169 miles, which is a state record, and claimed 58 lives, which is the 3rd highest total in state history.
They bring up the Joplin one. They don't. They're getting people pissed at them.
Continuing southwards, and we get to Tennessee, which has seen 4 F and EF5 tornadoes. The first one came over 100 years ago on March 11, 1923, southeast of Jackson. The second one was the tail end of another April 3rd, 1974 super outbreak F5, which began in Alabama and lifted in Tennessee. The third would occur 24 years later on April 16, 1998 by Lawrenceburg. Finally, the most recent one in state history came during the April 27, 2011 super outbreak. This EF5 was a long tracker that was on the ground for 132 miles and touched down in Alabama before lifting in Tennessee. Even though this tornado spent most of its time in Alabama, it claimed 72 lives in total, which technically makes it the deadliest tornado in Tennessee state history. The next state on the list is Georgia, and it's admittedly another state that's similar to Oregon. The Peach State has only seen one EF5 tornado in its history, and it was only in the state for about 3 miles, but it counts. Anyways, this was another one of the EF5s from the April 27, 2011 super outbreak, which again touched down in Alabama before dissipating in Georgia. This tornado, more commonly known as the Rainsville tornado, traveled for 37 miles and claimed 25 lives. Alabama, as we've mentioned already, is no stranger to violent tornadoes and has seen 9 F or EF5 tornadoes. The first one in state history touched down on March 3, 1966, and was one of the most notable as well, as it was on the ground for 203 miles and is the longest track tornado in state history. After this, the state saw 3 more F5s during the April 3, 1974 super outbreak. On April 4, 1977, another one tore through the northern side of Birmingham. 21 years later, on April 8, 1998, another tornado took a very similar path through Birmingham once again. Finally, the state saw another 3 EF5s during the April 27, 2011 super outbreak. Mississippi is also another notoriously active state, but has seen slightly
Dixie Alley.
less than EF5 activity, with 7 in state history, including a few that we've already mentioned. The first one occurred on April 5, 1936, and tore through the heart of Tupelo. This tornado was only on the ground for 15 miles, but injured 700 and claimed 216 lives. This tornado was the 4th deadliest in U.S. history, but ironically isn't even the deadliest in state history. That title actually belongs to an F4, which touched down on May 7, 1840, and claimed 317 lives. Anyways, the state saw 4 other F5 tornadoes scattered throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s before recording the 3 most recent ones during the April 27, 2011 super outbreak. Louisiana is another semi-controversial state, as it has seen 2 F5s, but neither spent that much time actually in the state. The first occurred on December 5, 1953, and was on the ground for just about a mile in Louisiana before crossing into Mississippi. It was only on the ground for 9 miles in total, but plowed straight through Vicksburg and injured 270 and claimed 38 lives. The most recent one occurred 18 years later on February 21, 1971. This tornado spent about 30 miles in Louisiana before crossing into Mississippi, where it would stay on the ground for another 79 miles, or 109 in total. This one also injured 510 and claimed 47 lives. Arkansas is a pretty simple state to cover, as it has only seen 1 F5 tornado in its history. It was an impactful one, though, as on April 10, 1929, it tracked for 35 miles,
Wow.
80, and claimed 23 lives. The activity in Missouri is slightly higher than its southern counterpart, as Missouri has seen 4 F or EF5 tornadoes. The first one occurred on June 15, 1912, just to the north of the town of Butler. The next instance was the beginning of the previously mentioned tri-state tornado on March 18, 1925. The third on the list occurred on May 20, 1957, when another F5 tornado touched down in Kansas and traveled 69 miles before crossing the border and dying in Missouri.
Well, Joplin.
Finally, the most recent one came on May 22, 2011, with the Joplin EF5. This beast injured 1,150 and claimed 158 lives, which makes it the 7th deadliest in U.S. history. As we arrive to Iowa, we see that the activity is still trending upwards. The Hawkeye State has seen 11 total F or EF5 tornadoes, with the first coming on June 17, 1882, and the most recent being on May 25, 2008. Although it was only rated as an EF4, it's also worth mentioning the May 21, 2024 Greenfield tornado. Mobile radar trucks recorded wind speeds of 309 to 318 miles per hour, which are only the 3rd time ever that wind speeds upwards of 300 miles per hour were recorded in a tornado. This goes to show that despite the official rating, this was more than likely an EF5 and possibly even one of the strongest tornadoes that Iowa has ever seen. Wisconsin has seen slightly less activity, but has still recorded 6 F5 tornadoes itself. The first 3 on the list occurred back in the 1890s, which was led off by one on May 22, 1893, then on May 18th, 1898, and finally June 12, 1899. The next one wouldn't happen for over half a century later on June 4th, 1958. The fifth one occurred on June 7th, 1984, and finally the most recent instance was on July 18th, 1996.
Oakfield.
While none of these F5s hold the record for the longest tracked in state history, the one on June 12, 1899 does hold the record for the deadliest. This one was on the ground for 30 miles, injured 200, and claimed 117 lives in total, which makes it the 9th deadliest in U.S. history. Moving west over to Minnesota, and we find that the state has recorded 8 F5 tornadoes. Once again, the first 3 in state history all occurred during the late 1800s, and the most recent one came over 100 years later on June 16, 1992. While it has seen some activity of its own, North Dakota is definitely quieter, as it has only seen 2 F5 tornadoes. Both of these actually came just a few years apart, with the first being on May 29, 1953, and the second one coming on June 20, 1957. Interestingly enough, both of these tornadoes were relatively short-lived and are nowhere close to the state record in terms of path length. However, the second tornado on this list, which traveled through the northern portion of Fargo and killed 10, surprisingly is the deadliest in state history.
Well, it wasn't a
South
state yet.
Dakota is actually a similar state, as it has also only seen 2 F5 tornadoes in its history. The first of the 2 occurred on June 17, 1944, just north of Watertown. The second and most recent one occurred 21 years later on May 8, 1965, in the southern part of the state. As we continue heading back south, we notice that the activity once again starts picking back up, as Nebraska has seen 6 total F5s. The first one was touchdown on May 17, 1896, spent about 99% of its life in Kansas, but just barely crossed the border into Nebraska at the end of its life. The next 2 on the list both happened in 1908, with the first coming on April 23rd, followed by another on June 5th. The fourth occurred 3 decades later on May 22, 1933, which was followed by another 5 years later on April 26, 1938. Finally, the most recent came another 3 decades later on May 5, 1964. As we arrive to Kansas, we reach the state that has seen the most F or EF5 tornadoes. Kansas has seen 16 total tornadoes, rated as the highest on the scale. The first in its history came on May 1, 1895, and the most recent occurred 112 years later with the May 4, 2007 Greensburg tornado. Some other notorious F5s in Kansas history include the March 13, 1990 Heston tornado and the April 26, 1991 Andover tornado. While the numbers do slightly drop off as we head south to Oklahoma, the state has still seen 13 F or EF5s. The first F5 tornado to have been recorded in the state occurred on May 10, 1905, and the most recent was the May 20, 2013 Moore tornado. Some other notable ones include the May 24, 2011 Piedmont tornado, and of course the May 3, 1999 Birch Creek Moore tornado. This is one of the other tornadoes where wind speeds upwards of 300 miles per hour were recorded, specifically a 321 mile per hour gust, which is the highest ever measured wind speed on Earth. As we move southwards one more time,
Texas.
we get to Texas, which is the last state on the list. The Lone Star State has seen 11 total F5 tornadoes, with the first coming on May 15, 1896, just north of Dallas, and the most recent being the May 27, 1997 Gerald tornado. Although it was very slow moving, the Gerald tornado did produce some of the worst damage ever seen from a tornado, which makes us have to at least entertain the idea that this might be one of the strongest tornadoes of all time. And just like that, we have covered every single state, and this is what it looks like from a zoomed out look. We see that the data aligns pretty well
Wow.
with where the known traditional tornado hotspots are in the United States, along with just a few surprise entries. The final tally is 1 F0 or EF0 state, 1 F1 or EF1 state and or territory, 5 F2 or EF2 states and or territories, 11 F or EF3 states, 12 F or EF4
so we're at
states,
F5.
and finally 22 F or EF5 states.
I mean, I've been in the Michiana tornado 2001, October 2001, but that doesn't really matter, does it? That's for a future video anyways. Tony, you've been through a couple tornadoes, have you? I've been through one tornado. The Tri-State tornado, Michigan tornado outbreak of 2001. I was in that tornado. That was October 24th, 2001. I mean, I was in that one. I remember that one by heart. That's the only tornado I've actually ever been in, was that one.
Extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems. Love is in the details.
Oh, look, we're great with teeth. We're toothbrushes.
But we're not gonna.
One's wood, one's plastic, so shut up. I would like to do that right now, but that's not going to happen right now until later. I could do that in a little bit. I might do that now. Or not, I'm not sure. We'll see. I gotta check some real quick before I attempt to do that. Yeah, I'll do it. After the news, I'll do it.
Some cash. Trip to Ireland.
I'll do the news, I'll do that.
HRV in your showcase. You bid $45,000.
Yeah.
Actual
I'll do that in a little
price
bit.
Is, don't shoot the messenger. $44,000.
Over by $1,000.
You're just over.
$1,000 over.
Gavin won a showcase. He won $44,549 with the prizes. Happy spring break to everybody who celebrates. Please get in touch, stay relieved, help control the pet population, and be kind to one another. Take care of your mental health.
So that's not bad. Only off by $1,000.
Forgiveness, and we'll see you next time on The Price is Right. I love you. Bye.
I'm getting tired of hearing that beeping from that bug thing.
This is George Gray speaking for The Price is Right, a Fremantle production.
My team's down my back. They come back and they do it again.
High five, boss.
You know I don't do those. NCIS Origins returns to the.
I like it says Origins.
My name's Nikki Fox. I'm Sheriff of Edgewater. You are Edgewater's finest. So I don't give up easy.
Experience the movie. So outrageous. You'll need a safe word.
Is he serious?
No, not playing. Rated PG-13.
Not watching that. We don't have a DMV in Michigan. We have a Secretary of State.
Slow day.
This is
Turn to pornography by AI.
tonight at 11.
Being used as blackmail.
Anybody can be a victim.
Hey, baby.
IT reveals the challenges police face when
Yeah?
investigating AI sextortion. Tonight at 11.
I hear you, baby.
I would put our reputation and our history up against
You know what's
any
funny?
one of our
Ooh, might watch that in a little bit.
reputation, both in and out of the courtroom, by being honest.
I'll do that in a little bit.
Good man, good decision.
This year,
Yeah, I want to do that too.
Shoe Station and Shoe Carnival are stamping all your favorite brands with our lowest price guarantee. Find a lower price and we'll match it. Adidas, New Balance, and more, stamped. Everything has been stamped. Hundreds of the latest styles stamped with the lowest price guarantee.
I'm getting tired of that beeping.
Is over.
You hear beeping? It's a mom's blood mastering device.
The Omega Casino Resort is now open.
At the San Francisco law firm, dogs are just like many of our employees are dog owners. But sometimes accidents happen, and those accidents can cause serious injuries. If you or a loved one has suffered a dog bite injury, let our family help your family.
Jay Leno's on watching him.
Trust News Channel 3 to protect and alert you.
A big West Michigan company being sold. What it means for its operations in Michigan moving forward. Kalamazoo Public Safety looking into what started a fire this morning, where it happened. And Texas Democrats flee the state in an attempt to block Republican efforts to redraw congressional districts. What Texas's governor says will happen if they miss the vote. News Channel 3 Live at noon.
Lose a job.
Covering West Michigan to protect and alert
That's
you.
good.
This is News Channel 3, live at noon.
Thanks for joining us on News Channel 3 Live at noon. I'm Kirk Mason. A big Grand Rapids company being sold. H&I Corporation and Steelcase announcing today they've entered into an agreement. H&I is an Iowa-based furniture company. The company buying Steelcase, who also makes furniture, in a $2.2 billion deal. Upon closing, H&I will own about 64%, and Grand Rapids-based Steelcase will own 36% of the combined company. It will be led by H&I's chairman, president, and chief executive officer, Jeffrey Loringer. Steelcase will maintain its headquarters in Grand Rapids. H&I will continue to operate its corporate headquarters in Iowa. Finalization of this deal expected by the end of this year. Let's take it outside. Live look at downtown Kalamazoo. The sun is out and the comfort is back again today. Meteorologist Jeff Porter joining us. And Jeff, don't waste this Monday because the heat is coming back pretty soon.
Kirk, you're right. Good afternoon. And the heat is in your 7-day forecast, but we want to focus on the short term here. And it's another day where we're dealing with wildfire smoke. So we start off here at Four Corners.
I always lived somewhere around here.
75 degrees. It is a live look. All right, from that
I don't know. Still in Colin. I don't know what we're doing if in Colin
at
still
least another
work.
12 hours because of wildfire smoke, and you might be wheezing, you might have watery, itchy eyes. That would be because of the smoke that is suspended in the air, and it's making for interesting looking sunrises.
I might get off in a minute. Do something else.
Out over the cornfield, of course. Corn is super tall these days. All right, lower 80s, filtered sun. That's
My channel is doing pretty good.
Fastcast or your forecast. East southeast winds really light, 5-10 miles per hour. Sunset 8:57.
Right there. Right there. A little down, a little lower. Right there.
Indiana and Ohio. Here's a look at the last couple of hours here. How about the last hour? Satellite and radar together. Officially 76.
I'll cut you guys off. I'll be back on later. Doing something else.
Miles per hour. Here are your midday temperatures. South Haven almost 80 degrees.